The big questions in life. Do you go with Pepsi or Coke? BMW or Mercedes? The bigger question for me though, do you go with the Monster or On's more recent release, the Stratus 3? I've had a few people on my channel asking me to compare these two, and this is exactly what we're gonna do on this channel. Let's talk about it. Okay, my name is Aubrey. I'm a very average runner, simply trying to be less average by the day, as at the time of filming this, you've given me 7,292 subscribers. Thank you very much. If you're on Instagram, connect with me over there. It will be good to have you. Okay, firstly, before we start with the comparisons, let me explain what these shoes are and why they're worth the comparison. And this is from a bigger built, everyday kind of runner. I'm nowhere near elite, and it's from that perspective. These two shoes to me do two things. They are very well cushioned, so they're good for my long and easy runs. I love the cushioning, but more importantly, and I know this sounds superficial, I just love the look of these bad boys. Functionally, to me, they are very close to each other, but there are some subtle differences, hence why we need to compare them. My comparison is going to have two sections. The latter part is subjective, just my opinions, whereas this first part is facts and three things that you need to know about these shoes that sort of start to tell them apart. Let's start with the weight. I wear a 9.5 UK, and in that size, the Monster weighed in at 268 grams, whereas the Stratus 3 is 328 grams. With this being heavier, the Monster wins that. 1 point to the Monster. Second thing is the price. With this being the newer shoe, it's at 170 pounds versus the 160 of the Monster. Price, especially in today's climate, is a big factor. I'll go with the Monster. Okay, so next up is the stack height. Now, this is where the Stratus 3 comes to its own in comparison. Both these shoes are a 6mm drop, but the Monster is 30mm at the back versus 24 at the front. This bad boy is 32 versus 26. Whilst they're both 6mm drops, there's a bit more stack in here, and I'm going to tell you why that's important when we start talking of the subjective areas in terms of the midsole and the feel of the Stratus 3 in comparison to the Monster. Going into the opinion section, the Monster is winning 2-1. I want to talk about design and colorways. This shoe has just come out, and there aren't many colorways or options in this shoe, whereas the Monster has been out for like 70 million years, and On has managed to bring out all sorts of colorways. And so it's a disadvantage, but it's a fact. If you want a bit more of a colorway option, this is going to be the key one. Now, the reason why that's important, the second thing I want to talk about in the opinion section, which of these two shoes look better? I know that sounds superficial, but the Cloud Monster is known to be stylistic. And for me, I also wear it just going about my business. And therefore, in terms of the aesthetic, the look, especially with the colorways On Running has done, Monster all the way. This is not going well, is it? 4-1. Okay, now I'm going to start reviewing and comparing the shoe from the top all the way down, and this kind of determines my felt experience in running in these shoes. Let's start with the heel. Easy, no brainer. I'm going to go with the Stratus 3. If you compare the padding in these two shoes, the heel lock, as well as just the cushioning and the plushy feel, this is no brainer. The Stratus takes this. Unfortunately, because of that padding, because of what they've done in here, it adds to the weight of the shoe, as I've mentioned. But in terms of the heel, no brainer. Okay, let's move on to the tongue. Easy, no brainer. The Stratus 3, again, because of the padding, this is a bit more textured. I love the plushy feel of this tongue. More importantly, when you're tying down the laces, that padding, there is an intentional padding, especially at the top of the tongue, where if you're tying down the laces, it won't pressure you down. The tongue in the Monster, I like it for being slick, and it adds to how light the shoe is. But it's a very flimsy tongue. Now, both these tongues are gusseted, meaning they're both attached in the inside of the shoe. But the Monsters one is light and flimsy. Now, other people might like that, but for me personally, I love comfort. If I'm looking for a light shoe, I'll probably go into something a bit more like the Cloud Boom Echo, Nike Vaporfly 3, race day specific. I'm not specifically choosing these for how light they are. So therefore, the plushier, the better. And therefore, the tongue on this one wins. Let's move on. The laces. Now, I won't lie to you. I'm a fanboy. I'm an On Running fanboy. I love everything that On Running does, apart from the lacing system in these two shoes. I just don't understand why we needed to do this in terms of the laces, the lacing system. But if I'm to choose one, I probably dislike the Monsters one a bit more. I like the feel, the resilience that the Stratus 3 has in terms of the lacing system. And that's just me being honest. They let this shoe down because of that. Maybe it's the innovation that they're after, but for me personally, it doesn't look as resilient. It doesn't look as functional as the Stratus 3 is. Let's talk about the upper. Now, when we talk about the upper, I always talk two things. I talk about functionality, the performance, as well as the aesthetics. I'll be honest with you. In terms of the upper, I'm going with the Monster all day in terms of appearance. I love how transformative this upper was for On Running. I love that exaggerated logo. In terms of performance, however, I have to say the purpose of plush max cushion is better translated in the upper of the Stratus 3. The reason why I won't give it to the Stratus 3 is the toe box. When you lace up the Stratus 3 to a point where you've got a very good lockdown in your shoe, the front here is a bit roomier than the Monster is, and it gathers up in a very unaesthetic way, should we call it. And if it wasn't for that, I'd probably give it to the Stratus 3. So in terms of the upper, both for performance, they both have very good breathability, but more especially for the aesthetic, the Monster will take that. We're now going to the midsole. Now this to me is where it's a no-brainer. You see, when we were first introduced to the Monster, they gave us this max cushion marketing messaging. And at the time, this shoe felt and delivered against that marketing promise. It did. So I kind of felt like, maybe this, what they intended and how this felt, is what the Surface 7 delivered. And in my opinion, we touched on a stack, 32 versus 30. I definitely prefer the feel of the Stratus 3, simply because you see where you're seeing this cloud tech, the holes there. You've got two sets of those in this shoe. It's essentially the same setup. However, this to me feels, let me emphasize, it feels. Now to some people it might not, but to me it feels like what they intended over here. The Stratus 3 delivers against the promise of plush and a bit more of a cushioned experience than what the Monster does. And that's just my opinion. It just might be my running style, maybe my build, but for me, if I'm gonna go for a long run and I want that plushier feel, this is the one I'm going for all day. At this point, I've lost track of the scores, but they should be on the screen. Let's talk about the outsole. Ding, ding, ding. It's a knockout, no brainer. The Cloud Monster is on the floor. It's been beaten up by the Stratus 3. Why is that? The outsole of any shoe aims to do two things and two things only. Provide the runner with grip, but also protect the midsole from wearing out, so offering you resilience to your running shoe. Only by just, technically, not that it feels any different, I'll be honest with you. If you look at the lugs on the Stratus 3, they're a bit more enhanced, they're more spaced out, a bit more aggressive than the lugs on the Monster. But to me, that's nitpicking. The biggest factor, the reason why I'm saying it's a knockout, bang, 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 if you look at the trench in the middle of these outsoles, the Monster still has a deeper dugout trench in there. Now, one thing On Running shoes are criticized for is picking up stones in that trench. They've overcome that in here by making that less deep in the middle. And that's one thing I just loved, that On Running have evidence listening, and therefore all other shoes that have been released since the Cloud Surface 7, the Stratus 3, I've just ran in the Cloud Eclipse. All of them have these, but less pronounced. And that's something I have to say. Now look, a lot of comparison videos that I watch on YouTube don't actually tell you which one people should get. Now here, I'm gonna give you the it depends answer, but I'll tell you which one my favorite is. Here, 1, it depends on how much money you have. This is 160 versus 170. If that's a key driver, and I think it should be, the Monster all day. But for me personally, given everything that I have said, which one would I choose? And it has to be the Cloud Monster. Simply because I don't just run 24/7. This is a shoe I can use to go get my son in from school. I can go to Tesco in, as well as do my workouts, interval sessions. And I'll be honest with you, functionally from a running perspective, there isn't much that this shoe does that this one can't. The reason why I choose this one, I prefer the lockdown in the Monster, because this, when you lock it down, gathers on the toe box in a very ugly way. Personally, I don't like that. This delivers against that. Secondly, the appearance. Stylistically, this is more my personality. But when it comes to comfort is key for you versus everything else I've said, the Stratus 3 all day. Now, which of these two shoes do I prefer the most? And I think the evidence is in the mileage. This is my most used shoe across all of my shoe collection. And I don't need to say it, I've got a big collection of shoes, and this is the one I've ran in the most. That says a lot. So out of the two, that's my go-to, the Cloud Monster. Thank you for watching. And if you want to see reviews of these two shoes, I tell you what, I'll leave the review of my Cloud Monster. It's quite dated, but it's over here, as well as the more recent review of the Stratus 3 over here. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon.